The dust-laden wind carried Emmer, Rose's desperate prayer, across the barren plains of Dry Creek, Colorado. As she knelt beside her husband's freshly dug grave in the summer of 1873, her two small children clinging to her worn calico skirt. The fever had taken Robert quickly, leaving Emma with nothing but memories, two hungry mouths to feed, and a dilapidated homestead on the edge of a merciless frontier. 3 months later, Emma stood at her cabin door, hollow-eyed and trembling, watching as 6-year-old Samuel and 4-year-old Lily grew weaker by the day. The drought had claimed their crops, the last of their chickens had stopped laying, and the single cow they owned had died the previous week. She had sold her wedding ring 2 weeks prior for a sack of flour that now held only dust. "Mama," Samuel tugged at her skirt, his once round face now gaunt with hunger. "When are we going to eat something besides broth?" Emma ran her fingers through his sandy hair. "Soon, my love, soon." The lie tasted bitter on her tongue. That night, as the children finally succumbed to fitful sleep on their shared straw mattress, Emma made a decision that tore her heart in two. Come morning, she would walk her children to town and find someone, anyone, who could provide for them. A respectable family, perhaps, who needed household help, or a rancher who might take on Samuel as a hand when he grew stronger. The thought of separation was unbearable, but watching them slowly starve was far worse. As dawn broke, Emma dressed the children in their cleanest clothes, combed their hair, and wiped their faces with a damp cloth. She packed their few belongings in a small bundle, including Robert's pocket watch, the last valuable item she owned. "Where are we going, Mama?" Lily asked, her little hand warm in Emma's as they set out on the 5-mile walk to town. "To find help, sweetheart," Emma replied, her voice breaking. They had traveled barely 3 miles when Samuel stumbled and fell to his knees, too weak to continue. Emma lifted him, though her own strength was failing, and carried him on her hip while leading Lily with her free hand. Her vision blurred with tears and exhaustion as the weight of her son and her decision pressed down upon her. It was then that the sound of hoofbeats reached her ears. Squinting against the harsh sunlight, Emma made out the silhouette of a rider approaching from the direction of town. Hope and fear mingled in her chest as the horse drew nearer. The man, who reined his chestnut stallion to a halt before them, wore a leather vest over a cotton shirt, dusty denim pants, and worn boots. A wide-brimmed hat shaded piercing blue eyes that surveyed the small family with curiosity and concern. "Madam," he tipped his hat, revealing dark hair streaked with premature silver at the temples. "You and these little ones look like you could use some assistance." Emma recognized him vaguely as Ryker McAllister, a cattleman who owned a ranch north of town. She had seen him on occasion at the general store but had never spoken to him directly. "Mr. McAllister," she acknowledged, pride warring with desperation. "We're just heading to town." He dismounted in one fluid motion, his gaze taking in Samuel's limp form in her arms and Lily's sunken cheeks. "That's quite a walk with 2 young ones. May I offer you a ride?" Before Emma could respond, Samuel went completely limp in her arms, his head lolling against her shoulder. A small cry escaped her lips as she sank to her knees, cradling her unconscious son. "He needs food," she whispered, panic rising. "They both do." Ryker knelt beside them, pressing a gentle hand to Samuel's forehead. "He's burning up, madam. Please." Emma looked up at him, dignity forgotten as tears streamed down her face. "Take my children, I cannot watch them die. I have nothing left to give them." Ryker's expression softened with understanding and something deeper Emma couldn't name. He reached into his saddlebag and produced a canteen and a cloth, which he dampened before pressing it to Samuel's forehead. "I'll take you too," he said simply, his voice low and firm. "All of you." Before Emma could protest, he had lifted Samuel into his arms and was helping Lily onto his horse. Then he turned to Emma, his gaze steady and determined. "Mrs. Rose," she supplied. Emma rose. "Mrs. Rose, I've got room enough at my ranch for you and your children. Food, shelter, and whatever care they need. No strings attached." Emma hesitated, years of self-reliance making her wary of such generosity. "Why would you do this for strangers, Mr. McAllister?" His eyes held hers for a long moment. "Because I've been alone in this territory long enough to know that surviving means helping each other. Now, will you let me help you?" With a small nod, Emma allowed him to lift her onto the horse behind Lily. Ryker mounted behind her, one arm securing Samuel against his chest, the other reaching around Emma to take the reins. The warmth of his body against her back was the first comfort she had felt in months. As they rode toward the McAllister ranch, Emma's thoughts swirled with uncertainty and a faint, forbidden flicker of hope. The McAllister ranch sprawled across a verdant valley sheltered by rocky foothills, a stark contrast to Emma's drought-stricken homestead. A two-story house of solid timber stood alongside a large barn, corrals, and several outbuildings. Cattle grazed in the distance, and the sound of running water indicated a creek nearby. "How?" Emma murmured as they approached. "The drought. Underground spring," Ryker explained. "Feeds the creek year-round. My father chose this land for that reason." As they reached the house, a woman in her 50s emerged from the front door, wiping her hands on an apron. Her silver-streaked dark hair was pinned in a neat bun, and her weathered face creased with concern as she took in the scene before her. "Ryker, what on earth, Mrs. Turner?" Ryker dismounted, carefully handing Samuel down to her. "This is Mrs. Rose and her children. They need immediate care." "The boy's feverish and they're all half-starved." Mrs. Turner's expression shifted instantly from surprise to efficiency. "Bring them inside. I'll heat some broth and prepare beds." The next hours passed in a blur for Emma. Mrs. Turner Beatrice, as she insisted Emma call her, was Ryker's housekeeper, a widow who had worked for the McAllister family since Ryker was a boy. She tended to the children with practiced hands while Emma, despite her exhaustion, refused to leave their side. Samuel's fever broke by evening after Beatrice administered a willow bark remedy. Both children eagerly consumed the thin broth and bread she offered, their small bodies desperate for nourishment. Emma ate little, worry for her children overriding her own hunger. When the children finally slept in a guest bedroom upstairs, Emma descended to find Ryker sitting at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee. He stood when she entered. "They're resting now," she said softly. "Good, please sit." He gestured to a chair. "You need to eat something yourself." Emma sank into the offered seat, suddenly aware of her filthy dress and tangled hair. "I don't know how to thank you, Mr. McAllister." "Ryker," he corrected, placing a bowl of stew in front of her. "And there's no need for thanks. Anyone would have done the same." "No," Emma shook her head. "Not anyone." She took a spoonful of stew, the rich flavor almost overwhelming after weeks of deprivation. "I need to be honest with you. I have nothing to offer in return for your kindness. Our homestead is worthless, our livestock gone." Ryker's expression remained impassive. "I didn't help you expecting payment, Mrs. Rose." "Emma," she whispered. A small smile touched his lips. "Emma, my ranch needs tending as much as my cattle do. Beatrice manages the house, but she's been asking for help for years. If you're willing to work, there's a place for you here until you decide what you want to do next." Relief washed over Emma. Work was something she understood, something she could provide. "Thank you, we won't be a burden for long, I promise." "You're not a burden," Ryker said firmly. "Now finish your stew and get some rest. Tomorrow will come soon enough." Emma awoke the next morning to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar curtains and the distant sound of children's laughter. For a moment, disorientation gripped her until the events of the previous day flooded back. She sat up quickly, her heart racing until she realized the laughter must mean her children were awake and well enough to play. After washing her face in the basin provided and changing into a simple dress Beatrice had left for her, Emma followed the sound of voices to the kitchen. There she found a scene so domestic it brought tears to her eyes. Samuel and Lily seated at the table, color returned to their cheeks, eagerly devouring plates of eggs and biscuits while Beatrice bustled around the stove. "Mama," Lily cried, scrambling down to run to her. Mr. Ryker has chickens. Real ones that lay eggs. Samuel looked up with a smile that Emma hadn't seen in months. And he says I can help feed the horses later if I'm feeling better. Good morning, Beatrice greeted warmly. Your little ones are remarkably resilient. Amazing what a good night's sleep and proper food can do. Emma hugged Lily tightly. Thank you for looking after them. Nonsense. It's been too long since this house had children in it. Beatrice set a plate at the table. Now sit and eat before it gets cold. As Emma joined her children, Ryker entered from outside, bringing with him the scent of fresh air and leather. He paused in the doorway, his eyes meeting Emma's across the room. Something passed between them, understanding, perhaps, or recognition of shared purpose. Good morning, he said, removing his hat. It appears the patient is much improved. He ruffled Samuel's hair gently. Thanks to your kindness, Emma replied. Ryker shook his head slightly, just being neighborly. He accepted a cup of coffee from Beatrice. I've been thinking, Emma. Your homestead, where exactly is it located? Emma described the small plot of land that had been her home for the past 5 years. Ryker's brow furrowed thoughtfully. That's about 15 miles southeast, if I'm not mistaken. Part of the Pearson Creek watershed, Emma nodded. Though the creek dried up last spring, I know the area. Not much good for farming, especially in drought years, but it could be valuable for other reasons. He took a sip of coffee. With your permission, I'd like to ride out there today and assess the situation. Perhaps there are belongings you'd like me to retrieve. The thought of her abandoned home brought a pang of grief. There's little worth salvaging, but yes, there are some personal items, my husband's Bible, some photographs. Consider it done. Ryker set down his cup. In the meantime, feel free to make yourselves at home here. Beatrice will show you around. After he departed, Beatrice gave Emma a knowing look. That man hasn't shown this much interest in helping someone since his father passed 3 years ago. Left him the ranch and a mountain of responsibility at the age of 27. He seems very capable, Emma observed. Beatrice chuckled. Capable, yes, and lonely, though he'd never admit it. She began clearing the breakfast dishes. Now, shall we find you some more suitable clothes? Those children of yours will need proper attire too. The days that followed established a routine that brought comfort to Emma's fractured world. While her children regained their strength, she threw herself into helping Beatrice with household tasks: cooking, cleaning, mending, and tending the kitchen garden. The work was familiar, but less desperate than her solitary struggle on the homestead. Here, there was enough food, warmth, and even occasional laughter. Ryker had returned from her homestead with a trunk containing the few precious mementos she had requested, along with news that troubled her. Your land sits on what might be an extension of the underground spring that feeds my property, he explained one evening as they sat on the porch after the children were asleep. With some investment, drilling a well, proper irrigation, it could be productive. Emma's hands stilled in her lap. I have no means to make such improvements. I know, Ryker said gently, but I'd like to make you an offer. Allow me to purchase the land at a fair price. It would give you a stake to start anew wherever you choose to go. The prospect of selling the last connection to her life with Robert sent a wave of grief through Emma, yet practicality demanded consideration. I need time to think about it, Ryker nodded, understanding in his eyes. Of course, there's no rush. As autumn progressed, Emma noticed subtle changes in Ryker. The stern rancher who rarely smiled now found reasons to join them for meals, taught Samuel to ride a gentle mare, and brought wildflowers for the kitchen table. His eyes lingered on Emma when he thought she wasn't looking, and sometimes she caught herself watching him too, the way his strong hands gentled when handling a frightened calf, how his voice softened when speaking to her children. One crisp October afternoon, Emma found Ryker in the barn mending tack. She had come to fetch Samuel, who had spent the morning helping with chores, but her son was nowhere in sight. Beatrice took him and Lily to gather apples from the orchard, Ryker explained, setting aside his work as she entered. Said something about apple pie for supper. Emma smiled, leaning against a post. Those children adore her, and you, Ryker's eyes warmed, they're easy to care for. Brave like their mother. A comfortable silence settled between them, broken only by the soft nickering of horses in their stalls. I've been thinking about your offer, Emma said finally. For the homestead. Ryker straightened, his expression guarded. And I'm inclined to accept with one condition. She took a deep breath. That you allow us to stay on working here until spring at least. The children are thriving, and I'm not ready to start over again just yet. Relief visibly washed over Ryker's features. I'd hoped you might say that. In fact, he hesitated, then stood and approached her. Emma, I've grown accustomed to having you here, all of you. I find myself dreading the day you might leave. Emma's heart quickened at his proximity, at the earnestness in his voice. We've imposed on your generosity long enough. It's not generosity anymore, he said softly. It's selfishness. I want you to stay, not for your sake, but for mine. Before Emma could respond, a shout from outside broke the moment. They both turned to see Samuel running toward the barn, his small face alight with excitement. Mr. Ryker. Mama, come quick. The apples are as big as my head. Ryker stepped back, a smile replacing the intensity of his expression. Well, we'd better see these miraculous apples, hadn't we? Emma nodded, her thoughts in turmoil as she followed him out into the sunshine. That evening, after a supper featuring Beatrice's promised apple pie, Emma tucked her children into bed with full stomachs and contented smiles. Samuel's fever had not returned, and Lily had gained weight, her cheeks round once more. The transformation in just a few weeks was remarkable. As Emma descended the stairs, she found Ryker waiting in the parlor, a ledger open before him on the desk. He looked up as she entered, his face illuminated by lamplight. The children are asleep, he asked. Yes, Samuel insisted I tell him the story of how you rescued us on the road. Again. Emma smiled. He thinks you're some kind of hero from a dime novel. Ryker chuckled, closing the ledger. Hardly, I just happened to be in the right place. Providence, perhaps, Emma suggested, taking a seat in the armchair opposite him. Perhaps. Ryker studied her for a moment. Emma, about our conversation earlier. Yes, she clasped her hands in her lap. You were saying something before Samuel interrupted. Ryker rose and moved to stand before the window, his back to her. I don't have a way with words like some men do. I've spent most of my life working this land, talking more to cattle than people. He turned to face her. But I know what I feel, and I've never felt this way before. Emma's breath caught in her throat. Ryker, please let me finish before I lose my nerve. He crossed the room and knelt before her chair, taking her hands in his. When I found you on that road, I thought I was saving you, but the truth is, you've brought something to this house, to my life, that I didn't know was missing. Laughter, purpose beyond just surviving each season. Tears welled in Emma's eyes. We're grateful for everything you've done. I don't want your gratitude, he interrupted gently. I want a chance to court you properly, to see if what I feel, what I hope you might feel too, could grow into something permanent. Emma looked down at their joined hands, his calloused and strong, hers work worn but smaller. It's been less than a year since Robert died. I don't know if I'm ready. I'm not asking for promises, Ryker said. Just time. Stay through winter, let me court you as you deserve, and if by spring you don't feel the same, I'll help you establish yourself wherever you wish to go. The sincerity in his eyes undid her final reservation. Yes, she whispered. I would like that very much. The smile that transformed his face was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. Winter descended on the McAllister ranch with a ferocity that Emma had dreaded during her years on the homestead. But here, surrounded by solid walls, ample firewood, and well-stocked pantries, the howling winds and driving snow brought a sense of cozy intimacy rather than fear. True to his word, Ryker courted her with a gentle patience that allowed her heart to heal and open again. He carved wooden toys for the children, read aloud by the fire in the evenings, and sometimes, when Beatrice had taken the children to the kitchen to help with baking, he would sit beside Emma and simply hold her hand in comfortable silence. On Christmas Eve, after the children had hung their stockings and been tucked into bed with promises of Santa's imminent arrival, Ryker asked Emma to join him on the porch despite the cold. Wrapped in heavy blankets, they stood together watching the stars glitter like diamonds against the velvet blackness. Emma's breath formed clouds in the frigid air as Ryker pointed out constellations his father had taught him to navigate by. "I have something for you," he said finally, reaching into his pocket. "An early Christmas gift if you'll accept it." He handed her a small wooden box carved with intricate wildflowers. Inside, nestled on a bed of velvet, lay a simple gold band set with a single pearl. "It was my mother's," Ryker explained, his voice husky with emotion. "My father gave it to her when they claimed this land, promising her roots and branches stability and growth." Emma touched the ring with trembling fingers. "Ryker, I don't know what to say." "Say you'll be my wife," he whispered. "Say you'll let me be a father to your children, that we'll build something lasting together." Emma looked up at him, this man who had saved her family from starvation and her heart from permanent grief. "Yes," she said, certainty filling her voice. "Yes to all of it." His kiss was gentle at first, then deepened with a passion that warmed her more thoroughly than any fire could have. When they finally broke apart, breathless and smiling, snowflakes had begun to fall, dusting their shoulders and hair like a blessing. "We should go in," Ryker murmured against her temple. "Before we freeze." Emma nodded, but neither moved, savoring the moment of perfect understanding between them. Spring arrived with a riot of wildflowers and the promise of new beginnings. Emma and Ryker were married in the town church, with Samuel proudly serving as ring bearer and Lily scattering flower petals before her mother. Beatrice wept openly, declaring it the happiest day since Ryker's birth. The sale of Emma's homestead provided funds to expand the ranch's operations, drilling the well Ryker had envisioned and purchasing additional breeding stock. The underground spring proved even more substantial than hoped, transforming the once barren land into productive pasture. As summer approached, Emma stood in the doorway of their home, her home now in truth as well as feeling, watching as Ryker taught Samuel to throw a lasso in the yard. Lily sat nearby, solemnly braiding wildflowers into a crown while reciting the names Ryker had taught her. Beatrice joined her, wiping flour-covered hands on her apron. "Just look at them," she said fondly. "Those children worship the ground he walks on." "As do I," Emma admitted with a smile, "and he you, my dear, I've never seen him so content." Beatrice patted Emma's hand. "The Lord works in mysterious ways. Who would have thought that day on the road would lead to this?" Emma rested a hand on her still flat stomach, a secret she had yet to share even with Ryker. Indeed, from desperation to abundance in less than a year. That evening, after the children were asleep, Emma joined Ryker on the porch swing that had become their nightly retreat. The air was sweet with the scent of clover and fireflies blinked in the gathering darkness. "I have news," she said, taking his hand and placing it over her abdomen. Ryker's eyes widened in understanding, then filled with such joy that Emma felt her own heart might burst with happiness. "Are you certain?" he asked, voice rough with emotion. "As certain as one can be. Beatrice confirmed my suspicions last week." Ryker pulled her into his arms, holding her as though she were made of precious glass. "I never thought I could be this fortunate," he murmured against her hair. "Nor I," Emma replied. "When I asked you to take my children that day, I was at the end of hope. And now." Emma lifted her face to his, seeing in his eyes the future they would build together. "Now I believe hope is just beginning." As night deepened around the McAllister ranch, the house stood warm and secure against the vastness of the frontier. Within its walls, a family born of tragedy and chance, kindness and courage, slept peacefully the widow who had once offered her children to a stranger's care, the cowboy who had claimed them all, and the children who would grow up knowing only abundance where once there had been desperate need. And in the years that followed, when travelers would pass the prosperous McAllister ranch with its expanding herds and fields, They would sometimes hear the story of how its mistress had come to be there, a tale that began with hunger and ended with love. A reminder that even in the harshest territories of the West, compassion could transform lives in ways no one could predict. Emma would tell the story to her growing family, to Samuel and Lily, to the son born the following winter whom they named after his father, and to the twin girls who arrived 2 years later. She told it not as a tale of rescue but of partnership, of two broken paths merging to form a road strong enough to carry them all forward together. And Ryker, listening to his wife's telling, would always add the same ending, that in saving her he had saved himself.